So yesterday there was a decision in a landmark stem cell case in the United States called US versus Cell Surgical Network. And I've been watching this case for a long time because it has momentous implications for the field of regenerative medicine in the United States, and in particular for me personally. Cell Surgical Network is one of the oldest stem cell companies probably in the world. It's based in Los Angeles, and they focus on what's called stromal vascular fraction, which is a type of stem cell procedure derived from a patient's own adipose tissue or fat. And this type of stem cell procedure has been legally contentious in the US for a long time. The FDA has always claimed that it's illegal and that they don't allow it, but the clinics have fought back on that with mixed results in the court system. In addition to that, Cell Surgical Network offers a clandestine culture expanded stem cell service. Culture expansion is where the cells are grown in a laboratory to greater numbers. And that's definitely been illegal in the United States since 2014. And Cell Surgical Network has been doing both of these things in the US for a long time. In 2017 or 2018, the FDA enjoined them, meaning it moved in on them to shut them down. This went to court, and the court case was delayed for 2 years because of COVID. And then in 2022, a California District Court judge, Jesus Bernal, ruled in favor of Cell Surgical Network, meaning he decided that these two types of stem cell procedures, stromal vascular fraction and culture expansion, are the practice of medicine. They are not biologic drugs that the FDA can regulate, and therefore, by implication, that a patient should have the freedom to access these treatments in the US without FDA approval. And this was the first time that I'm aware of that any defendant, anyone ever beat the FDA in court like that. I don't always agree with what Cell Surgical Network does medically. I had extensive conversations with them about getting treatment a couple years ago, and I decided not to move forward with them. But I do consider it heroic that they fought the FDA on this and won. But the FDA didn't accept that. They appealed, and it went to a higher level of court. That's been going for 2 years now. And then just yesterday, the Appellate court handed down a decision in that case. And the judges sided with the FDA, meaning they reversed the Bernal decision of 2022, and they ruled that both culture expansion and stromal vascular fraction are biologic drugs that the FDA can regulate as it sees fit. And they reasoned that these types of stem cell procedures meet the standard to be considered as biologic drugs, meaning they are more than minimally manipulated, whatever the hell that means. So this has huge implications for me personally, because I desperately need culture expanded adipose-derived stem cells in the United States. That is the case because I can no longer use my own bone marrow as a stem cell source because my bone marrow stem cell counts are low. So even with culture expansion at Regenex Cayman in the Cayman Islands, I cannot get enough stem cells from my own bone marrow to treat all of the many different areas of my body that need treatment. Therefore, I need to use my own adipose tissue as an alternative. I also really need to be able to get these treatments in the United States because this is the only place in the world where high-level interventional orthopedics skills are found. You really can't get something like the PICL procedure anywhere else in the world but here. So I need to be able to access this here. So this, and in addition to that, by the way, I believe that if these procedures were to open up and become legal in the United States, that it would have the impact of dramatically lowering the cost of the currently available types of biological therapies like platelet-rich plasma and bone marrow concentrate, and also the culture-expanded stem cell procedures you can get outside the US. It would bring the prices of these things down because when the supply of services increases, the costs come down. That's a law of economics, and that's exactly why some people don't want it to be legal. So this case, had it gone in my favor, would have made a huge positive difference in my life, but that's not going to be the case now. And this is what I expected to happen. I did not think for a second that the court system in the US was likely to ideologically support an individual like me and my right to access my own stem cells in the US. And so I was braced for this outcome. Nevertheless, there was at least a sliver of hope that it would go my way, and I was hopeful. And so I was not naive, but I was hopeful. And when it didn't go my way, my initial reaction was that I was gutted and angry, but it was not nearly as intense of a or prolonged of a reaction as in 2015 when I first discovered stem cells and I found out that the FDA was blocking access to the type of stem cell procedure I need in this country. What really pissed me off is that I found out about it by way of a very trashy editorial published by a very trashy writer in the LA Times. It was titled, "The Appellate Court Hands the FDA a Stupendous Win on Dubious Stem Cell Clinics." And it was just this, trashy piece of shit editorialist for the LA Times who was essentially gloating that the FDA is going to continue blocking my access to the stem cell treatment that I need to save my ass in the US. And it was just laced with all the typical buzzwords, unproven, dubious, and quoting Paul Knopfler and saying that this is a win for science and for patients. And so he's gloating and celebrating that that the FDA is going to block my access to the stem cell treatment that I desperately need and that I know works in the US, at the same time claiming to speak on my behalf that this is a win for me. These people are fucking insufferable, but I'm used to this by now. What really disappointed me was that Dr. Christopher Centeno, the founder of Regenex, in the blog post that he made on this, applauded this decision. He sided with the FDA. And Dr. Centeno, if you don't know, was at the center of a very similar court case in the early 2010s. It was called US versus Regenerative Sciences, and this was the first landmark stem cell case in the US. And Dr. Centeno at that time heroically fought for a patient to be able to access his own stem cells in the US, and he lost that court case. That was not his fault, but the result of that outcome was that culture expanded stem cell procedures became illegal in the United States. Many people don't realize that the reason that you have to go outside the US to get a culture expanded stem cell treatment is because of the very court case that Dr. Centeno and Regenex were at the center at from 2010 to 2014. And now a decade later, Dr. Centeno is applauding the FDA because he's rationalizing it as this is going to allow the FDA to clean up the stem cell Wild West in the US. That's 100% pure bullshit, okay? That's completely wrong. This is not going to do anything except stop legitimate providers from being able to offer these types of stem cell procedures and instead deliver them entirely into the hands of the black market for stem cells, which consists mostly of scammers and incompetents, the kind of people who are willing to risk breaking the law to make a quick buck selling a stem cell treatment. And so, yeah, I don't even know what the hell to say. I'm very disappointed that with all due respect to Dr. Centeno, I have a lot of respect for him. He's just completely wrong about this. Stem cells are ubiquitous. You can't get them off the market any more than you can get a plant like cannabis that can grow in your backyard off the market, or any more than you can get moonshine or alcoholic beverages that you can make in your basement with simple household ingredients off the market. Stem cells are in all of our bodies. They're very easy to harvest and deliver as a treatment. You're not going to get rid of them. You're just going to take them out of the hands of the most conscientious providers. That is what benefits patients. It's when the best and brightest and most conscientious doctors are able to advance these kinds of therapies, not when the FDA controls our health decisions. Regulation is the very snake oil that it claims to be, that its proponents claim to be protecting us from. You have to apply the same scientific standard to regulation that you apply to these treatments. So when you claim that regulation protects someone's health, that is a positive statement that requires scientific evidence. And there is no evidence that the FDA protects anyone's health. There's no scientific evidence that the FDA adds, or any form of regulation for that matter, adds even a single second to your life. So the idea that government authorities can improve your health by controlling your body and your health decisions, that is the great historic form of pseudoscience that's been going on for thousands of years. Okay, and so I'm not saying that Dr. Centeno is a pseudoscientist, but he's just completely wrong about this. And I had a book I wanted to flaunt in front of the camera. I don't know where I put it. It's Ayn Rand, the fucking, what is it goddamn called? It's called Ayn Rand, Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal by Ayn Rand. And Dr. Centeno should read that as a refresher course on capitalism. And so this case from here is going to go like, I don't know what's going to happen from here. It might go to the Supreme Court. I hope it does. I really don't know what's going to happen. By this point, I figured out that these court things generally do not go my way, so I'm not holding my breath. I have always hoped that in the long term, the FDA is going to lose control of its ability to regulate the stem cell space because it's just so impractical, especially as patients start to see these therapies becoming available in other parts of the world, and why not here? They're going to see that the FDA is the bottleneck, and eventually they're going to have to release their stranglehold on that. But I don't know what's going to happen. So anyway, that's my Cell Surgical Network video.